Well, good morning, everyone. Here we are with another episode of the Four Amigos with the inclusion of John. And today we have the pleasure of having Lisa Jeffers with us, and she's going to give us some insights into her business, right to home. Is that correct?
Right at
Somebody
home.
help me out here.
Right at
Right
home.
at home.
Right at home. Thank you. And we're excited to be able to share her journey and what she's been doing with us and helping us understand how, as all of us who are now North End baby boomers will probably benefit at some point. So with that, Ron, I'm going to let you take it away, or John.
Before Ron says, I'm just going to say that right at home is such an easy name because it does make you feel right at home. And that's the goal. The goal is to be right at home. And the service and the business is about being right at home. And I kind of like it. It's got a good flair to it.
Yeah, I agree.
I like it
too.
I agree. You do have to mention home care in there, and I noticed that you've done that, Lisa, on your website. You've got right at home, and then I think dash home care, depending on where you get found online, because you've got a lot of associations that are listed here as well. So it all works, right? So Lisa, you've got about 100 employees, and this is that's a lot of people. Anybody who starts in business, and we talk about big business, little business, and if 500 is a big business, then everybody else is small business. But those of us who work in the small business arena and have done so for a long time recognize that when you get to 40, 50 employees, you're doing pretty well. You've hired a lot of people, and so 100 people is a lot of people, which would indicate the kind of success that you've had. When did you start the business, Lisa, and how did that all come about?
Well, we opened our doors in 2009. Oh my gosh, already. It was during the recession. We were crazy. My husband somehow pulled me away from my job, and we decided to open this business together. But it all started with the two of us taking care of his grandparents. They both had dementia, different types of dementia. So one would go this way and one would go the other way. And the two of us would just be constantly, tearing our hair out, trying to make sure they were safe, taking care of them, whether it's physically helping them bathe or, making sure they ate their meals and took their medications. We took them to their doctor's appointments. So it was a couple of years of really, really hard work. That was back before the home care industry even existed. This was 35 years ago. Oh. And it was really hard. We had church family, we had family, we had friends and neighbors help. But that experience really stuck with us. I actually eventually went into social services, where I worked with foster kids first, and then went into the senior care program, which is my heart. And then Terry said, why don't we try to help the seniors in our community? And like I said, he got me to quit my job, and we went forward with this franchise.
Wow, that's great. And what kind of background then did Terry have, your husband? Did he have business experience? Was it another vocation? What was his background?
Well, he's always been a sales guy.
Okay.
So at the time he was working for Penske Truck Leasing, and he was a branch manager, and they were pegging him to, keep on going up the ladder. And he just said, at the end of the day, I've rented a truck. Oh, and that's not what I want to do with my life. Yeah. And I loved my job. I loved working with seniors. I was actually on a task force with the DA's office to investigate elder abuse. So this has always been my wheelhouse, and he saw how much I loved it. Of course, he remembered the times that we spent helping his grandparents, and he said, let's go for it. And he actually found right at home and vetted quite a few different home care agencies. And we chose this one because we felt it just really had that heart before the business salesy stuff. And, I certainly appreciated that.
Yeah, so it's when you have a team and you understood the business already and a deep understanding of the business. And then of course he's got some sales and promotion experience background and or temperament. I mean that's a nice way to get started because you really had a kind of a group of assets there before you and characteristics before you really started. So yeah, really great. And you started in somewhere in the West Valley, is that correct?
Well, we actually, our first office was in Rancho Cucamonga,
Okay.
and we started there. We kept building and building and expanded into the Claremont area. So then we had 2 offices, and the Yucaipa office opened up actually because the gentleman there was a chaplain, and he was offered the opportunity to become a chaplain at a church in Orange County. And he said, you know what, can you just take over with attrition, with the clients' conditions changing or, getting better and not needing services? Can you just make sure my office is okay? And we said, sure. And then it became too much, having 3 offices, and we decided to downsize. My mom had just had a stroke, and so I wanted to spend more time with her. My sister was having the first grandbaby, so I wanted to spend more time with the family, and we decided to sell Rancho and Claremont and just stay in this area. And we love this area from San Bernardino to Banning. We live in Redlands, and so this is very much the heart of where we feel comfortable. It's more our speed than the Rancho and Claremont areas, and sort of like that whole LA vibe.
Yeah,
We just love it here better, and we decided to sell the other 2, just stay here and concentrate on this community.
Now, Ed is going to have some interesting questions, I think, about buying, selling, because he actually is a specialist in buying and selling businesses and family business. So you want to ask a few questions?
This is interesting. Did you have a challenging time selling those 2 operations?
No, actually, we had several offers, and we ended up picking the gentleman we liked the most, for lack of any sort of scientific methodology, just because it was our baby, it was our business, we grew it, love it. And home care is not about selling a hammer. It's about providing care to people.
Right.
And so we definitely wanted to pass along our business to someone who had the same heart that we did for our ladies and gentlemen, and for our staff, our caregivers. It was very much, it was so hard. It was so hard to sell, but it was the right decision at the right time. And we needed to make sure that we passed it along to someone who was going to care about it.
I would imagine whoever bought the franchises or your businesses, that was a smart move on their part, than rather than trying to start them from scratch. This is not an easy business to start from scratch. So they got a viable business that they could start running and expanding right off the bat. That's a brilliant move on their part, and it was good for you.
Yes, it was definitely a win-win situation. He kept the staff intact. And so, the name recognition was already out there. We had a marketer who was already embedded into the community. And so he kept everything in place. And like you said, just expanded from there.
That's great.
How has he done since then, Lisa? I'm sure because these are personal connections for you. Are you happy with the results?
I am. He's done a really great job. The thing with Right at Home is all of the local owners, we get together periodically, we share best practices, we keep in touch. So it's nice to, see his success.
Cool.
I've got a question, Ron. As the other 3 gentlemen know, I'm always come back to people and heart connections, and I think we all agree that when you've got 2 or 3 people working in a team, it gets a little bit more interesting, and you get 10 people working on a team, and how do you keep that? I'm really fascinated, especially in this time of perhaps turnover and churn in the healthcare industry. What are the best practices? And maybe you don't want to disclose those, but I think I have a hint that some of them you'd be willing to disclose. What are some of the best practices that you use in A, attracting the right people, and B, then retaining? And how do you keep your strategic mission of caring well for they're not just clients, the extension of your caring side. So how do you do that?
Well, there's no real trade secret. Uh-oh. There's
Wow.
something going on with the screen.
He can hear you just fine.
Something just happened with the screen. Oh,
It's
am I
back.
back? Okay.
Yes, you're back.
Well, I was just saying there's no real trade secret. A lot of it has to do with in the office, there's myself, my husband, Terry. We have 2 care coordinators, Veronica and Rosemary. We also have a wonderful lady who helps us with our on-call, which is, calls after hours. It's a 24/7 business. So we have a live person who answers the phone. So already we're accessible at all hours, day or night, holidays, weekends. So part of that is just being there for our caregivers and our clients. And
Right.
also we're fun. We have fun in the office. When somebody comes into interview, we're just, we make it very much a family atmosphere. So it's not somebody walking down the hallway and it's stuffy and it's quiet. It's fun. It's, we treat our staff like family, and they understand that. I think they feel that warmth, and that's part of how we attract the right people to provide the right warm care to our ladies and gentlemen. And we do a really great job of matching skills, matching personalities with our ladies and gentlemen, so that it's a win-win situation, and everyone's happy. The office is happy to be working with our, both our caregivers and our clients. Our clients are happy with the matches that they've gotten to help them. And our caregivers are really happy, and they love their clients that they're working with. And if anything ever goes awry, or if there is not a good match, we solve it right away. We're not perfect, but any issues we'll work on, we'll own it, we'll fix it.
So you mentioned, the personality issues, and what I heard was the competency issues. So obviously you've got to have competency in one area, but you also have to have that almost untouchable little piece where you connect, and there's an empathy or a compassion there as well. And that does depend on the personality. Obviously, how do you go through that assessment, and that how do you do that trait analysis? Do you do the trait analysis, or is that you, or is that Terry, or is there a team? How does that work? I'm kind of fascinated by that.
It's all of us. Do you mean matching the caregiver with the client?
The matchup, yeah.
Well, regarding the interviews, our staff who come in, the caregivers who come in to apply for the job, if one of us doesn't feel right, it's a no. All 4 of us have to agree that this is someone that we would trust with our own families. And so that's where it starts. And myself and Veronica do all the consultations. We do everything in person. Even during COVID, we did everything in person because, these screens are nice and they're very efficient, and it's a great tool. But we really feel that the face-to-face is what's so important with our interviews and with our clients. So we meet the families, we talk to them, we talk about a plan. I do a home safety evaluation. Maybe this chair shouldn't be here. Maybe you need this, grab bar in the bathroom. So we do a lot of prep work with the actual people involved. And then when I get back to the office, we sit and we chat about, what Mr. and Mrs. Smith need and who would be a good match. And we've been really successful over the last 14 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Lisa, what have been your biggest challenges? Because obviously you're dealing personally with elderly folks, some of whom have their own challenges and can be really hard to deal with.
Well, the biggest challenge was staffing during COVID. We had a lot of caregivers who took a leave because they wanted to keep their own families safe. And of course we understand that. So the staffing issue has been the most difficult, but we've come out of that, and we're growing, and people are working again, and clients are accepting people into their homes again. It was all really just a matter of keeping safe. So we supplied, as a company, all of the personal care, the gloves, the masks, the gowns, the sanitizers, the cleansing wipes, all of that. And, of course, it was more of an expense at the time, but it was well worth it to keep everybody safe.
Mhm.
Well, let me ask you this question. March 2020 is when it hit. How did you and your husband keep your sanity? Because this is a major blow to your business. COVID.
You're
Wow.
assuming we kept our sanity. We did
Oh,
not. But you know what? At the end of the day, it all comes down to what's the best for each person. And, it certainly wasn't for us to decide for every caregiver, for every client. Some clients did back away and say, just for now, my daughter's going to move into the home and we don't want any new people in the house. Completely understandable. And as I was mentioning earlier, some caregivers said, I don't want to work out there because I need to keep my family safe. So it wasn't so much a matter of keeping our sanity, but just being flexible to what each person needed and accommodating them to the best that we could.
But I can imagine that you were just bombarded during the first several months with everybody making their own judgments, decisions. We want to do this, we want to do that. And they're calling to ask, can we do this? And then they change their minds. I mean, it must have been a crazy time.
Yes.
It was a crazy time. Yes, it was a very, very bizarre year and a half. It took about a year and a half to sort of regain that normalcy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just a matter of keeping our ears open and listening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I said, doing what we could to keep everyone safe and happy.
So how did you, this is not a direct business question, more of a societal question, I suppose. How did you handle the desire of some of your clients to let certain people come into the home, and then here you've got your caregiver who is also there, and meanwhile, many of the other bigger institutions were just simply closing the front door and saying, sorry, nobody gets in at all. How was that a tough issue? Were you able to relax a little bit, take some extra precautions? How did you handle those days?
Well, we didn't relax at all. But like I said, we took every precaution we could. We provided all the PPE to all of our staff. And that, I think, was a weird challenge in itself,
Mm-hmm.
because it was hard to find and it was so expensive.
Yeah.
The price of gloves went up. It was hard to find hand sanitizer.
Mm.
Back then, distilleries were turning their alcohol into hand sanitizer. Like, people were getting really creative at the time, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
Everybody was just sort of in this team, this big team, trying to keep people safe.
Yeah.
And we certainly were no exception. But it was very, very difficult. But we got through it, truly by the grace of God.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a lot of praying.
Mm-hmm.
We still do.
Yeah.
And that helped us keep our sanity.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. So what kinds of where's your future? You've done very well. Started businesses, sold businesses. You're currently settled in the Yucaipa Redlands area, and you've said you right-sized, and at one point you had 200 employees. You're down to 100 employees after you sold 2/3 of your business. So it sounds like you've probably grown since you've grown the Yucaipa Redlands office. Where do you see yourself going in the future, given where we're at and the fact that your market is expanding all of the time?
It
Yeah,
is.
exactly.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, you've got 3 people here who might be your clients in a few years.
yeah. Ray will be first, however.
That's true.
Absolutely. He might be ready pretty soon.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think any of you are ready anytime soon. But we're just gonna continue to grow. I mean, we're gonna continue to hire. We're going to continue to serve, our community, and we're really just sort of being led in whatever direction we're going.
Okay.
We love what we do,
Mhm.
and I can't see myself not helping people. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just the way I've grown up, since I was a kid. And I would go to Japan, and my grandfather was a doctor, my grandmother was a nurse. They started a very small hospital in their town, their village in Japan. And, during the summers I would go and help. And that's just part of who I am and who I continue to be. So we will continue to help the community as long as we can.
Yeah. Well, you've had a really long legacy in the whole area of healthcare and elder care. For a lot of the folks who watch our channel are people who are considering getting into business, and they want to understand what they should do, how they should prepare, what they need, personally need to be ready to do, what kind of expertise. So, given your long legacy in healthcare, how would you recommend that somebody who's interested in your business prepare themselves to get into the business?
Gosh, to prepare, number one, know that it is really, really hard to start a business, and
Okay.
it will completely take over your life. So that is one thing I was not prepared for. I think my husband had a much better grasp on that, with all of his business background. And, here I am working in social services and not understanding business. I really didn't understand business till we opened, and how hard it would be. And to Terry's credit, he didn't tell me how hard it was going to be and how long the hours were going to be and how many tears I would cry because it was so hard. But I mean, really, I think you have to be realistic and say, you know what, if I'm going to succeed, I need to make this my priority. And we didn't have kids, so it was very easy to say, all right, this is it. You and me, babe, let's do this. Day and night, calls would come in at 2 or 4 in the morning. It didn't matter. It was just the two of us. And we really had to come together as a team. So just know that it's a lot of hours to build your name, to build your business. And for us, it's hiring. It wasn't a small business. Like, we needed 5 people on our team, and that's how we're going to run our business. For every lady or gentleman that we serve, it might not be just one caregiver. It might be 2, 3, 4, 5, a team of caregivers, depending on how much care they needed. How, we run up to 24/7, so we have teams of people who help, our ladies and gentlemen day in, day out. We also have those who only need a ride to their doctor's appointments. So that's pretty easy. But it's that strange, healthcare is that strange balance between, the staff that you hire and the clients that you serve. And it goes up and down both ways constantly. So it's a difficult business, but if you love people, it's so rewarding. So rewarding.
But you were around. You grew up in sort of a medical community in a way with your grandparents starting a hospital and then you serving there, and then also you went into social services. So you really had a whole interesting background there. You obviously care about the clients. That's obvious. But what kind of technical background should someone look to if they say they haven't come from the caring side of things? Maybe they have compassion, but they don't know anything about how to care for an elder person. How do they prepare themselves? Or does, say, a franchise handle that? Do they do all of that training for you? And I know there's a huge amount of regulation that we haven't really even brought up yet. So, I mean, what are the dynamics there for somebody starting starting in your industry that they need to be sure to master before they get started?
I don't think there's anything you have to master. A lot of it sort of ebbs and flows and grows as you're in the business. We have a lot of franchise owners who don't have my background, but are very successful because number one, it is the heart. Number one. And the rest of it you can learn. We're not a medical field, we're non-medical.
Yeah.
So, a lot of owners have decided to, take classes or learn online about the proper techniques, the proper ways to assist somebody safely. And, we certainly provide ongoing, basically CEUs for our caregivers. And if you don't have a background in healthcare or services, personal care services, it doesn't matter. You can still succeed in this business.
Okay. Now you said you have a whole team. Do you have to be prepared to hire 3, 4, 5 people when you start? If you have to have that much capital to be able to get this thing going?
No, in the beginning, it was just me and Terry as we grew.
So you literally did it yourselves.
We did it ourselves.
Yeah.
And we stayed married. Yay.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
That was the hard
Yeah,
part.
that's it.
But yeah, we didn't hire
That's a
our
plus.
first, it is a plus. We didn't hire our first basically office staff till about month 14.
Oh,
So
really?
that whole first year, we just did everything ourselves, all the consultations, all of the hiring, all of the HR,
Yeah.
all of the business, running the business.
Yeah.
And then we had our first office person come in to help with some of the scheduling. The scheduling is probably the hardest part, matching the right client with the right caregiver, but the days and times have to match.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So
Lisa, one of the things
talk
that
about
we,
sweat equity. You guys really developed sweat equity in order to be able to hire that first person. Yeah, right.
one of the things that we're always interested in learning from people like you, Lisa, is that, transitioning a business is always a challenge. And I'm sure you've given some thought to it. One of the things we find is that most people are in a business, so they don't think about what they're going to do when they get out of the business. Can you give us some insights as to what you're thinking about in terms of transitioning?
Well, the next step would probably be to hire someone like a general manager so that Terry and I can step away a little bit. The team that we have now, although small, is mighty. And, we didn't take a vacation or take any time off for a few years. Probably the first 3 years, we didn't take any time off. But now we have our office team in place where we can leave for, a week at a time here and there. In looking at the future, I envision someone like a general manager and, someone to take over, the day-to-day operations so that we can step away even further. But I can't not be involved. I can't just walk away because, you get to know these caregivers and their families, and you learn about your clients and their families, and that connection is so important to me and gives me so much joy and is so rewarding. I can't imagine just saying, you know what, run the day to day, just give me the numbers. Let me know if anything, let me know if the building burns down. I can't imagine that.
So, Lisa, I've got a question about the cycle of how you find your clients, how long your clients are with you, and how the clients actually leave being with you. Part of the question is here, we've had several of us had several family members who have gone into part-time care at home, had right-at-home care, for example, and then over a period of time, because of medical necessity or because of the emotional need for full-time security around that individual, they end up in one of the other systems that are out there. And of course, there's been quite an uptick of homes that have been converted to full-time caregiving homes, and I'm sure you interface with that. So how do you bring people in? How do you explain the options? And from time to time, do you advise that, look, we're at the end of our limits to deal with this and it needs to be, how does that work?
Well, it's just a matter of keeping in communication with the family, and our caregiving team. So we meet and discuss regularly, what's happening with Mr. and Mrs. Smith. How are they getting better? Are they getting worse? How are they doing cognitively? Are they safe to live on their own? So we're in constant communication with our staff, who are basically our eyes and ears in Mr. and Mrs. Smith's home, of course. We keep in touch with Mr. and Mrs. Smith. We also keep in touch with their family. When we start to see some major decline, I will ask for a meeting with the family and talk to them about their options. I have a great wide range of resources that I can point them to. I'm also happy if they choose to move, to go with them and point out different pros and cons of the different homes that they're looking for, or that they're looking at. So we're very involved in the process from A to Z. And again, because of my social services background, I do the bulk of that, of any sort of, transitioning into, a different community or a facility. And the nice thing with our caregivers is that the communities are very welcoming to have our caregivers bring Mr. and Mrs. Smith prior to their moving. So they start doing the activities. So they start getting to know their neighbors. So they start getting to know that staff. And we try to make that as smooth as possible. Sometimes they allow us to keep visiting Mr. and Mrs. Smith and working with them, to make sure that they are acclimating to their new surroundings well. We help them pack, we help them decide, what are the things that you really want to take, what means something to you. And we also work with professionals who do that professionally, whether it's downsizing, whether it's estate sales. So I have resources for the senior community that I draw upon, but we're very hands-on and very involved in care for them and any sort of transition they might need.
Yeah, it sounds like, Lisa, you're really an extension of the family.
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
Yeah.
So tell us about the downside of all of the paperwork that's required, the new rules, and the government regulation that you have to deal with.
Well, California is a beast. They're not always business friendly. They're difficult to deal with, but we have to. We have our home care organization license. We follow all the rules. We follow all the Department of Labor laws. We just have. We don't like it. We don't like having a lot of regulations. We don't like the high cost of doing business in California. But at the end of the day, that's not what we have to think about, because there are certain things we have to do to be a viable, bona fide agency. So we do it, and sometimes with a little, groan, but we do what we have to do. And there's constantly, different changes coming down the pike about regulations, whether it's wage and hour or, workers' comp, scope of care that we can practice. And, it's just a matter of, I definitely have become involved with our local legislators and working with them on the opinions that I have regarding our industry.
Yeah. My mother was in a home that was. She and her husband had two of them, and they found that they had to come back down to a single home because the regulations of having two of them were so expensive that they were no longer making money in the second one, and therefore it was, and now they had their own home, but this was just a home that they had about 6 people in. And it was absolutely wonderful because, like you, they really cared about it, but they found they could only really afford, 1 or 2 people to kind of cover those nighttime issues and so forth. And so regulations really, really cut their business in half. So there's an example of how that can happen. And, I know it's hard for you to identify what's going to happen next with the state of California. But do you have some trepidation about what may be coming down the pike in terms of California regulation in your business?
In our business, the big question mark is unionization.
Yes.
And, part of me understands that because there are unscrupulous business owners out there. But when you're not one of them, you do treat your staff well, and you pay them well, and you follow all the overtime rules and regulations, and you give them time off, paid time off, and sick leave, and all of the benefits. It's a little scary to see how that may change the face of how we have to do business.
Yeah. Well, and I'm concerned about the cost, or was when Mother was still here. I was concerned about the cost. And fortunately, the cost was exceptionally good. It was only a teeny bit more for room and board than having somebody come into our home and take care of her. She was living with us. But I can see where the cost per hour, and I don't know where they are now because that's been some time. I can see where the cost per hour could get so outrageous that a person really couldn't afford to do it at all. And I think that's the concern. My concern is that we get to the point to where, all of the regulations are adding 10%, 20%, 30%, 40% to that hourly rate that you have to maybe double. When does California kill this business? And as a result, we don't have any care for the people who are in need anymore.
It's one of the biggest challenges when I was looking at the business model was trying to figure out how it could be affordable. If somebody needs 24/7 care and you have to have somebody at their home, and a lot of people want to live at their home, they don't want to go into another home. How do they afford that? Is there any type of insurance opportunities to help pay for that? I couldn't find any. Maybe there are some. I was just wondering what you thought. How do you make it affordable to people?
That is a great question. You're right. At some point, it does become unaffordable to many, many members of our community. But regarding 24/7 care, for those who can afford it, that's great. But if you can't, that's where I have the conversations about different options that they have.
Yeah,
Because we're non-medical, so
right.
medical insurance doesn't pay for us.
Right.
That's right.
So, yeah, so we do work with veterans benefits. We also work with long-term care insurance. But a lot of this generation that we serve currently, they don't have long-term care insurance. Their kids are looking at it now for their own futures, but if you don't have long-term care insurance and you don't have veterans benefits, it's basically out of pocket. We have ladies and gentlemen whose family chips in. They take reverse mortgages, they sell some assets, or some have put themselves in a place of financial well-being enough to be able to afford it.
Yeah, because your cost structure keeps going up, and when they raised the minimum wage recently over the last 5 years, it was an astronomical increase. What gets back to, how did you come up with the pricing? What you were going to charge for your services so that you were making enough money to cover your expenses?
Well, it's a formula that takes into account, wages, insurance, which is so big in California. Other states don't have to deal with the high insurance rates, especially workers' compensation.
Oh, it's
But
outrageous.
it's just a formula that you put together and you try to account for what staff you might have. In the beginning, we were pretty, low because it was just me and Terry. But as our office staff grows, we have to build that in as well.
Absolutely.
So you're right. You have to take into account rent and, computers and electricity. And so we're very fortunate that we started off with a formula that worked for us.
Good, very good.
So you've got a formula, and then of course you add a little profit in there, and you pay yourselves. And that's all great, but so I guess the ultimate issue here is that there will be a point, if things continue to go up, there will be a point at which these poor folks run out of money and they're not going to be able to have these services anymore. So it's kind of like, I think about the market, and the market right now is increasing all the time in terms of older and older people. However, the market also requires, based on your minimum requirements to be in business financially, then the market has to be able to afford it. So as we have more and more people who can't afford it, your market then begins to get smaller. And of course, not that you can do anything about that. It's going to be what it is. But I can see where anyone whose children live out of state would take a look at their parents and maybe say, it is time for you to come and live with us, because we just can't afford to live in California. We can't afford to have you live in California anymore, because the cost differential for daycare maybe is 40%, 50% less than it is in California. Now, I don't know where we are on that, and I'm sure you've run into some of those circumstances.
We have definitely. And, we're not the agency that sort of forces our services. We're never going to be the ones who say that, okay, finances aside, you need to use us. We want to make sure that whatever we provide is what's right for that individual. And if it's not right for them, we absolutely upfront, get their family involved and say, hey, these are your options in California. You're right. California is a beast. It's a
Right.
very, very different than much of the United States.
And that's wonderful that you have that attitude, and you can still have a nice thriving business. Yeah, absolutely.
One of the biggest risks in California is legal exposure and lawsuits. And you have to protect your business and separate your business from your personal life so that people don't have really deep pockets to go after you. I presume you've looked at those opportunities to make sure that your whatever business that you create, you have as many barriers as possible if you get sued, so they can't get into your personal affairs.
Yes. Yeah, we definitely looked into that from day one.
Yes.
Because, when you're dealing with so many people, whether it's caregivers or clients,
right,
and their families, it's just this huge pot of people that open you up to liability. So we were very cognizant of that from the beginning.
That's great.
Lisa, we really appreciate your time. I was going to give everybody an opportunity to ask a wrap-up question here, because this has been very informative and very helpful.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's been really great. I think I got all of my questions in. Thank you very much, Lisa, for agreeing to meet with us today. And I'm sure that there are going to be some folks who are considering your business and that will have been given some great new insights today as to the kinds of people they need to be and the kinds of challenges that they'll have. Thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm happy to talk to anyone. If someone does contact you, I'm happy to sit down with them and talk in more detail about, what it takes to open this kind of business, or even, is it worthwhile to purchase an existing business versus starting one, since we've done both. And, I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Do you mind then, Lisa, if we distribute your telephone number and email for those who might have some interest in talking with you?
Absolutely, no problem. Sure.
Okay. John, you have any other questions?
No, just a comment that I've known Lisa for several years, and I think the heart of the business is wanting to take care of the clients that are involved as a priority, to be profitable, to have resources come out of it, but the priority is to make sure that the individuals, and I've had reason to see Lisa talk with some friends of mine who were dealing with where to go and how to do it, and they got some good and solid wise counsel to make the decision that was best for their situation. And I think that at the end of the day, that's how businesses succeed, is they evaluate what's going on and they make sane, good decisions for the benefit of their clients and their own organization. It's got to be a win-win. And it's been a pleasure knowing Lisa and working with her in other areas.
Yeah, just from the short amount of time we've had, Lisa, it's quite clear that you have a real heart for this. Ed, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
Lisa, you sold me 100%. Any loved one, I would recommend your services. You set the culture of your company, and it's a very positive one. And as John indicated, you want to take care of people, and that's the number one goal of what you do. A guy like me doesn't have that like you do, and you're really you're someone you can connect with and feel safe that your loved ones will be taken care of.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, even if I always say, and my staff knows, that even if you don't need or use our services, I am happy to point you in the right direction as a resource, always.
It's fabulous.
Yeah, that definitely shows. Thank you so much, Lisa. It's always a joy to kind of learn more about what we're doing in the community, particularly for elderly, since we're all moving in that direction.